You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet. That you showed up was written in my palm. You are a statement, explode like a bomb. I get to push myself to victory. You make me winner. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win every way. You showed me how to spread my wings.
Many of you were expecting Sharon, and she'll be here very shortly. But one thing that happens is that we don't let things stop the show from going on, particularly when there are amazing guests that are about to join us that are going to be talking about some very necessary conversations around economics and around cities' economics and all in that space. So we do know that these are very important discussions that are held here on Pod TV, even those that are held by, of course, one of our illustrious leaders, that being Sharon Campbell. So I'm going to jump in really quickly, but I'm also going to bring in this amazing guest that I've just recently learned about, and all in that space, learn more about some of the things that she is doing there in the Fayetteville area, because we do know that Fayetteville has definitely got some things happening in the way of growth and development, just like my city of Durham, North Carolina does as well. So we're seeing all kinds of projects that are taking place and a lot of nonprofits that are doing amazing work as well. So that was part of the conversation I was having with Cassie Greggs earlier, and I want to bring her in and she can tell you more about who she is, what she's involved in, and all in that space. And it's all part of this conversation around the American Rescue Plan. But I'll let Kathy talk more about that. I've also recently learned that Kathy is a fan of the blues, so she's already won some favor with me in that regards and that space. So I want to bring in Kathy Greggs, and she's going to talk about some of these very important economic conversations that are going on, because we do know that cities and states and a lot of other people are trying to make sure that we are having development and growth in our cities, our counties, in our country towns, and in a lot of other places. But we want to make sure that it is growth that is done in an effective way and all in that space. So, like I said, going to bring in Kathy Greggs, and she's going to tell more about this conversation. We were talking a little bit about it backstage earlier and all in that kind of way. And of course, if need be, I can also bring up a little bit of the presentation that they have that they use there in the Fayetteville area and all in that space. So, like I said, still working to get Sharon into her own show, but definitely we do love to get this vital information out whenever possible and all in that kind of way. So, Kathy, it's been a pleasure to learn more about you, including some of those musical tastes and other things that are going on. But definitely, I don't care whether you live in rural North Carolina, and we're talking about places like Hendersonville and Franklin County, which would be Franklinton, and even where I grew up in Warrenton, and actually mom lives in Rocky Mount now, or you're living in one of the bigger cities like Fayetteville, Raleigh, Charlotte, or a number of other places. We do know that economic growth is an important part of that conversation. I know that I oftentimes talk to my good friend Reggie Johnson when he comes by here and has served on different boards, including that of the Carolina Theater and even some board work here at the Hayti Heritage Center. And of course, he is an economic development pioneer as well. So definitely know about those conversations through conversations with him and people in the real estate space like Lou Myers and of course the late Field Freelon and a number of others that are in that space as well. So definitely we do know that economic growth is a very important conversation, but I'll let you take it away. And like I said, I'll also be reaching out to Sharon. And if at some point you want that letter and the PowerPoint up, we can also get that up as well.
Well, thank you, Mark. And it's such a pleasure, for you all to even acknowledge that the work that we're doing. I
Mhm.
mean, the fact that we have this type of Plan to Prosper show, and I know Sharon's been doing this for a very long time, but we really need to check on the people that is in our surrounding areas as well as our neighbors during this whole economic crisis that everyone's going through after this pandemic, which we still are in the pandemic. We haven't really got over it. So, this is why it's so important that we have this type of, how should I put it, this type of audience, this type of platforms that you guys are doing when it's global, to show everyone how money should be used for those that are suffering versus money being used for politics.
Right.
So we at Fayetteville PAC, we started Fayetteville PAC back in 2015. We did not become Fayetteville PAC or established until 2016. Me and Sean McMillan had a conversation in Fayetteville regarding while driving while black. 40% were getting stopped with a citation or an arrest. We both are Army combat veterans, so we believed in, of course, continuing to serve our country in other areas versus just the fact that we're not at the Army no more. So we still believe in public servancy. With that, we were under the umbrella of Blueprint North Carolina for a period of time. We also, when it comes to Black economical development, we believe in also divesting from the police and defunding the police to put into the Black and brown communities. So we're also with another organization called Black Leaders Organized Collective. That's also a statewide organization with many members across the board and organizations. We also are with the North Carolina Police Accountability Network, which is a statewide effort as well, with over 50 different organizations across North Carolina that advocate for immigration reform, police reform, reentry, second chances, also the cardinal system, the criminal justice system, the juveniles at risk. So we do a lot of work. About 2 years ago, Fayetteville PAC said, hey, we're talking about the criminal justice system and a police reform, but we're not talking about how people get into the system, right? So we decided to amplify us a little bit more further and say, let's just talk about all injustices, economical, social, everything that affects people. So we then amplified ourselves as not just being for police accountability, but for being for all injustices, for all people, no matter what race, religion, sex, or orientation you are. We will advocate for you. We work with other organizations here locally, such as Organized Against Racism of Cumberland County. We work with a national organization for women here, the Fayetteville chapter. We have worked with Action NC. We have also worked with other organizations, other organizers that are giving out to the community, such as Seth Wish Foundation. We also have worked with several different, several different legislators that worked hard in the community to get funding or to help assist us. I'll use COVID as an example. When COVID here in Cumberland County, our detention center, they felt as though, I guess, no one needed a mask except for the staff. So I'll use that as an example. The inhumane acts against people here just in our detention center. They decided they did not want to give masks nor any PPE to those people that are in the cell. Now, let's make sure we're clear. This is a detention center. This is not a prison. So this is a holding cell. This is for you to stay there until you have a trial or you are convicted of a crime. Okay. This is not for you to be there, throughout your whole prison term. So this is a holding cell. So, it took 3 months before we finally got masks in this detention center. And even though our county received a lot of funds for PPE, they chose not to do the human thing to give masks to those that was in the detention center. So we had it where there was people that was in positive pods that were negative, right? We had it where there was people dying, or having symptoms when they came out and died. We actually had one death. In the jail, in a detention center. We still are waiting to see if that resulted from COVID or not being protected. So we as Fayetteville PAC, we started to advocate for these funds that has been coming through the city and the county throughout the COVID process for the last several years. And we're like, hey, these are millions and millions of dollars that we are not seeing where it's going to. That was the main question. We decided, let's go ahead and go a little bit further. And we're gonna go get some training. So I went to North Carolina Budget and Tax Center, and they had a policy academy as well as budgeting. So I actually took that class for several weeks and I graduated. So I'm not going to say I'm an expert. I'm just going to say, well, I did learn budget, of course, being in the Army, but, to get really into the meat and the potatoes of it, I had to actually take this class. Then we also took a class called sheriff budgeting and city police budgeting, which is so important because the people don't understand how budget works. And we feel that in order for us to advocate for people, we have to bring that awareness and that education. Education always important as an advocate to the community people and the audience because they don't understand unless you educate them. We also believe when we educate people that we educate them at their education level. So there is terms and certain articulation that we may use that they may not understand. So we have to make sure that the accessibility is correct and the language is correct when we're breaking this down. And I say this because I try to break it down almost to the eighth grade level of understanding, because you won't understand budget terms such as allocation, to be determined. They'll put a TBD. Some people don't understand that. Capital funding, some people don't understand what capital funding is, capital funding investments. Some people don't understand that actual language. So we feel as though we must make sure it's accessible to the people that don't understand it, and we will make sure they understand it and educate them, because that's what we do. That's the way that we're supposed to build our community and also police our people, right? So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things I was curious about is this past weekend over at Hayti, we actually had the screening of a short film that was done by a former police officer, and all in that way, it was a documentary or a short film called UN50, and it was done by BJ Council, and all in that kind of space. And she was made it up to the rank of deputy chief here in Durham City Police Department, and is definitely doing some work to make sure that people know what they can and can't do when they are stopped by law enforcement. And I know there's also a gentleman named Brian, and I can't think of Brian's last name. I think he's out of Houston, that had that whole pocket system where you would sometimes have things at your disposal if you were dealing with police and all in that kind of way. So I was wondering if you were familiar with either one of those initiatives and if you had any conversation with them, because I want to say that BJ has some ties to the Kinston area, because the event that was here, even though it was in Durham, a lot of the people that were participating were Kinston folks in both their law enforcement and also their city politics there in the town of Kinston. I think there were like 3 or 4 people that were associated with different parts of Kinston government that were here at this particular event. Just like there was an event on Friday that dealt with the history, which oftentimes we don't know enough about either, around our firefighters, because there was a cook and ladder company here that was black run, and that was in the late 1800s. And definitely at that time, a lot of our communities were in not the city prime, but in the outlying parts of the city of Durham. But they definitely had to protect their own, so they created their own fire department. So there is a gentleman here that is honoring some of that legacy, and that was an event that was on Sunday. But I was just wondering your take on some of these initiatives that are even coming from within either the law or the firefighting communities, and if you were aware of any of these initiatives that were going on.
well, Mr. Lee, first let's go back a little bit, because I used to be on the ACLU board, North Carolina ACLU board. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, have studied and learned and trained in police accountability. We also are national partners with the actual National Association of Civilian Law Enforcement Oversight.
Mm-hmm.
So we believe that civilians should always police the police. The police should never police themselves, because if so, we wouldn't be where we are today. We believe that qualified immunity should be eliminated in order for transparency to happen in our communities, okay? Because qualified immunity is what holds us back from real justice.
Right.
Okay. Now you're talking about that movie, but this is the thing about it. First of all, the movie should never show what you're supposed to do when a police officer stops you. Because first of all, the police officer is supposed to have sound mind judgment and be fully trained as a professional servant, public servant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's make sure we're clear on public servant. I want to say that word again, public servant. So he should be the one that has the sound mind intelligence of knowing if a person has committed a crime, has not committed a crime. We shouldn't go by, I think this
Mhm.
person has committed a crime, or because you are driving that car in this neighborhood, you committed a crime. So this is where we're talking. This to me, I mean, okay, I'm happy they got that movie, but what is the real solution to the problem? The
Right.
solution is eliminating qualified immunity so
Mhm.
people's lives can be saved and police brutality can end, and we will get rid of the toxic leadership from the top going down in the police stations. We
No.
also need to make sure we understand civilian police oversight, which is something we have advocated for the last 6 years. We did a presentation with the Governor's Cooper's Task Force. We even presented recently to the federal legislation on civilian police oversight after just what happened.
Mhm.
You know,
We
that has
saw some of that. We saw some of that accountability, and unfortunately, it didn't also involved Durham as well, because I understand that there were some people that were not overly pleased with the woman that is now the head of police in Memphis, and we do know what happened there in Memphis. But we also understand, because I do have my brother that has worked in uh, getting kids out of gangs and other things with some of our youth programs, that some that are programs that he founded himself, and some of our programs that he has worked with other folks as well, because currently he's working with a company that he does not own, but is definitely in that youth leadership and getting our kids out of some of those gang mentalities and all in that way. But I do know from conversations with some folks that were associated with him that there were people that were not overly pleased with the leader and when they were here in Durham, and of course they did see what happened in Memphis as well. But I don't know if you have any take on that conversation, because we did see that it was some of our own that were taken and killing that particular man. It wasn't somebody that was one of the white cops. It was some of our own that got part in that toxic environment.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, right? It's about the toxic leadership, because
Mhm.
leadership gives the culture of the workplace. Leadership tells you how it should look, and they are so representing how they want you to look. So when I say that is, can we blame every police officer, or should we blame the culture of the workplace or the workspace or the leader, right? But also training, right? So even though we get training, because even in the army we got training every day in the army. I mean, actually, the question of it is, in the army, we cannot engage nor shoot at anyone without permission. So I don't understand how we can come up and start, shooting people without permission. I don't understand why we would have to do excessive force by shooting them 77 times, 50 times, however. I mean, what is the de-escalation process? Because I haven't seen nothing de-escalating, even though the policy clearly states de-escalation is the first use of force. Deadly force will never be used unless it is an intent of the person to kill you.
Yeah.
Until then, I haven't seen those intents. So I don't understand how we are allowing our police officers that we pay salaries to violate our rights and kill us because they failed to do their job and do their due diligence to make sure we are safe.
No,
That's
that
what
makes a lot. That makes a lot of sense,
so
and I can
until
definitely
somebody
agree.
can explain that to me, no matter what movie that an old police officer did, no matter what a chief of police did, at the end of the day, lives are being lost, people are being killed, and you should be fired. And whoever else allowed you to do that, your DA should be fired, and the Department of Justice should come down and investigate all of you and get rid of y'all because I'm paying taxes and I'm tired of seeing it.
No, and
Period.
along those same lines, I'm gonna bring in Sharon as well. She did finally get here
Okay.
as well. But one thing I've been curious about, I know it's happening in Fayetteville. I know it's happening here in Durham. It's happening in Raleigh, where I believe Sharon's at and everything. But one thing that is frustrating in that same space of accountability is the notion of gentrification. We do know that there are a lot of communities that were very much our communities, and now you can't help but run across folks that are of a different culture. And not saying that they don't need to come in these communities, but are they giving back to the communities that they are coming to, and are they sometimes taking our institutions and running with our institutions and all in that space? So I didn't know if you had any thoughts as I bring Sharon in about the whole notion of gentrification, which we also know is a very powerful conversation within our economic DNA as well.
Well, hello, Miss Sharon Campbell. How are you?
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. So we have an actual board member. Her name is Monique Edwards, and she does the gentrification, redistricting, and our actual voting process. But I'm going to say this when we're talking about gentrification and redlining and redistricting, right? Because see, that word redlining is still happening now.
Mhm.
The issue that we have is, first of all, we have so many people and so many politicians that's telling us how we should live when we should as people be able to tell you how we want to live, right?
Mhm.
We should be able to tell you where our money should go because that's our taxpayer money, right? We should never ever have closed sessions. Our politicians should never be closed. That includes the North Carolina General Assembly. They should never close sessions. Everything should be publicly open. We should be able to see what's going on with our money. We should be able to see if we're getting our money's worth by allowing you to sit in that seat, right?
Yeah.
Because we invest in the city as well as our county, but we're also investing in you because you're getting paid.
Yeah.
So we have the right to see what we're investing in, right? Just like you do at your own job. Gentrifying. So when we're talking about gentrifying, we have been, it is so much gentrifying here in Fayetteville with the Murchison Road cordon by itself. Now, I know you all know that, Fayetteville State is on the Murchison Road.
Mhm.
Many years ago, they decided to go ahead and do a Murchison Road cordon, is what they called it, okay? With this cordon, they are going to have 10 racquetball courts. Now, predominantly black neighborhood. So that means they're going to push the black people out that cannot own their homes anymore because they are using $82 million to upgrade this street. So that means your house is going to go up. That means you may not be able to afford that land anymore, right? So that means that we're going to have to move you out somewhere else. And that's gentrifying, right? But then you got the Fayetteville State. If they would have changed the name Murchison Road, because just so we're clear for the audience, in order for you to have an HBCU school, you have to have a historical black founder or leader of that area in order to have it, just so you know. Now, if they was to change the road from Murchison Road, guess what? Chapel Hill, which is really the owner of Fayetteville State, would come back and take it, right? And it'd be a totally different road. It wouldn't even be HBCU anymore. So let's make sure how that works, right?
Haven't we already seen that happen though? Because as I recall, there is a certain university that used to have, and I have some of that roots in my bloodline as well, but they used to have some Native American part of their history, but they're not even called that anymore. I think they're called UNC Pembroke, where they used to be called just Pembroke University, but now they are
Exactly.
UNC
See?
Pembroke.
People don't know that. But look, you got 10 racquetball courts being built. You got 9 bike trails. 9 bike trails. I don't know how many black people ride bikes, but it's not many on Murchison Road. So I'm trying to understand how you're saying it's not gentrifying. But
I can't say that we don't drive bikes though, because there is a black bikers group. I think they're out of Raleigh and Durham, so we are having some folks that are both regular bikes as well as the motorcycles, because we know that those are two separate things. And actually, that same brother
two separate things. Those are just regular bike trails. Those are not motorcycles, just bike trails going down. Right. So, and then the prices of rent go up. Mm-hmm. So how can you afford? Just like that's why we're doing this American Rescue Plan documentary, because we're saying that. Everyone in Fayetteville, first of all, Fayetteville is a tier 1. So we are below the poverty. We are below the poverty. The average person comes home with $27,515 a year, right? So we're below the poverty, but yet the rent is 2 times the amount for that person to afford. So if that's not more gentrifying and redlining, I don't know what else you want to call it.
But I got another quick question. I'm going to turn it back over to Sharon and everything, and we're going to play that video before I disappear and everything. But one of the things that I get frustrated by is we have some folks on this network that are from other countries, and they oftentimes will throw the Indians at us, meaning that they are doing so well in corporate America and in certain fields like some of the STEM fields. So they'll be like asking the question as to why we don't have that same kind of success and why we are blaming the other communities and all in that sense. And I don't necessarily think that we're blaming them. And we also know that some of those people that are coming are the elite of those countries, whether it's from India or from Nigeria, but they don't necessarily see that as their argument, because they will quickly mention that the folks that are having tremendous success in some of those other communities as reasons that we should have tremendous success as well. And I don't think that that is a fair argument, but you're in that lane. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then I will definitely play that commercial after hearing it. And by that time, you and Sharon can continue the rest of this discussion. I've thoroughly enjoyed the discussion with you and everything.
Well, let's talk about something, because there's something that no one in their household that's of color want to talk about, and that's generational wealth. So before we can even talk about having people come from other countries to take over certain things, we got to talk about what we're taking over now. We're 75 years behind generational wealth. It's not even a conversation in the home to talk about. First, a living will. Second, life insurance, because people are doing GoFundMe's, right? So let's just think, and I visualize this and give this to a lot of people in the audience to understand how this really looks. When we're talking about Black, African American people in this country, well, first of all, it's a corporation, it's not a country. You have to look at that yourself. But anyway, the country, right? So when we're talking about African American people, 75 years behind generational wealth, right? And we're behind generational wealth because guess what? The generational wealth stops when that first person is separated from your home. So when your husband is gone to jail, generational wealth stops. When your mother goes to jail, generational wealth stops. When your mother and your grandmother and your grandfather dies and they give you that money and you know you got boo cousin spending it on Hennessy and all this other stuff, guess what? Generational wealth stop. When you get that money and you sell the land that your family left you, generational wealth stop. We got to understand how we stop it first before we talk about trying to build it, because guess what? We're only 0.5% of the billionaires that you see all these celebrities doing. 0.5. So guess what's going to happen? When that table opens, Beyonce and Jay-Z, they'll be eating peanuts and water because they ain't got enough money to sit at the other table. Okay, let's be clear on that money, because there is no real Black industry that has billions of dollars and is global international enterprises to build generational wealth. Because guess what? The white people started in the womb. Once their wife was pregnant, they already started getting insurance, land, the name stuff. We are behind, people. So don't be talking about you want some reparations, because some of y'all don't know how to spend reparations, let alone get life insurance. You're asking for GoFundMe's. So we start going for GoFundMe's, we might have some generational wealth.
That's very true. And sometimes we don't even understand what we have when we have the land, because a lot of people want to think about the house that they own, but they're not thinking about the trees that are back there, because that tree and that timber can also be part of that generational wealth that we are not thinking about anymore. You're right. There are a lot of institutions that we have interest in, but we don't necessarily own anything within that. I don't know of a Black-owned football or basketball team. There are some that have maybe some partnerships, but they are not fully owned by those.
That's what I'm saying. So we can't talk about no generational wealth until we get something to say that we can do generational wealth. Now you can go get a C6, I can get a C6. We can come all together and do some investments, or you can invest like some Black people do and some Black celebrities invest in the prisons, right? That's what they do now. Don't get it twisted. There's a lot of celebrities that invest in our prisons and they get stock from that.
Wow, they get stuck in our prisons. I didn't know that. And so they're also fighting against the Fight for 15, where folks are trying to get a living wage. I got some friends in that space as well, because we do know that living wage is also an important conversation. And I'm not sure that $15 or $20 is enough to live off. It probably needs to be more like $25 or $30 if we're being perfectly honest in terms of what they're asking. So 15 is actually the low end, and they're still fighting against the 50.
It is.
That's just crazy. But I'm going to play this little 1.5 minute trailer that you were kind enough to send, and then I'm going to bounce off. But I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I'll let you and Sharon continue the conversation. But
well, thank you, Mark. It was great talking to you. And
thank you, Mark.
No problem.
$900,000 in Fayetteville.
So people would do anything if they're hungry, you know.
We saw $1. Exactly. It's $1.36.
They did this, and they had to do it since they must have received some money. But I wonder did they raise the rent, or did they do it on their own, not even going over there. See, that's a breeding ground for rodents.
You're being a part of a documentary. It's called American Rescue Plan Funds from Fayetteville PAC.
I know they have squatters in there.
We got some price gouging going on, y'all.
If the office look like that, then you know they don't care. It could be dead.
Let's get these eggs, because we can't afford those eggs.
Seems like they have more empty, burned out places than they do occupied. Put in with a few $100,000 and make this place better than had all those hurricanes. And they still don't have it repaired.
What did your receipt say?
They're not under emotional distress today because I'm trying to figure out how me and my kids
For a price gouge.
Our local politicians are sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. That's a problem.
And I love what Fayetteville Pack is doing.
As long as we get the money in the mail.
Well, I want to thank y'all, give you a hand. And the reason why is you exposing something, not just in Fayetteville, but around the world, especially in rural areas. And I think about the leadership that it must take in order to do that, and how many people is sitting back saying, thank you. And how many don't even know what American Rescue Plan is. Never heard of it, right? Never heard of it. No, haven't had a chance to go down there and say, wait a minute, you mean you got some money to be able to help this trailer park and you ain't doing it? We must educate our people. So I want to know more about the education of our people and how you hold these elected officials accountable for the American Rescue Plan.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you once again for allowing me to come on your show. And thank you for everything you do by bringing awareness, not only to our country, but also across the world. You know, we really, really thank you, because we need this conversation. It's uncomfortable to some people, and some people may not want to be a part of it because they don't understand how budget work or money work. But at the end of the day, you know, this is the people's money. So first, I want to say that, and I hope you continue to prosper and show everyone what it looks like to be, first of all, oh, she got the pack. So first of all, to make sure that people understand they matter, their lives matter, and we as humanity must live on earth together, and we must help each other, right? So that's something that I have to make sure. That's something I have to make sure that we are clear on a lot of things, because Fayetteville Pack believe in public servancy, and we believe in helping everybody, right? No matter what. So let's first start off with the fact that I had a dream, Miss Sharon. So I did. I'm not lying to you guys. I don't write anything down. I don't write no speech. I have nothing written now. So I have everything in my mind. So what happened was, last year I went to advocate at the city council about having a gun violence prevention center and using American Rescue Plan funds for that, because I felt that we have enough money that we can allocate just to build at least one, which is only $5 million, by the way. Okay. To start off with. So, you know, I'm like, hey, but we decided that we were going to get with our statewide partners, because I did take the training with the North Carolina Budget and Tax Center. And then we decided to get with our statewide partners, which is called the American Rescue Plan Partner Project. Now, with this that Mark is showing us, this is the actual fact sheet that we came up with. We looked across the board and we said, hey, these are the needs for Fayetteville. And then we wrote the statement of the need, as you can see, because it says in there, the city of Fayetteville lacks adequate shelter. So one thing about Fayetteville Pack, we're not just going to have a solution or a resolution. We're going to also show why we need this solution, right? So the solution for transitional housing for people experiencing homelessness, we just gave an estimate cost by going with the Budget and Tax Center specialists. And we also use the U.S. Treasurer in this, you guys, for this fact sheet to show us how this will look just to open up one shelter, one transitional housing, or 2 or 3, depending on how many, beds you may have in there. But we did the research and we put in there the fact that current research shows that a 2-bedroom will cost 2.4 times the amount of the actual full-time job minimum wage, like Mark was saying earlier. So we're talking about, you got to just for you to rent a 2-bedroom unit, fair market rent in Fayetteville, it's going to cost $36,000. But people ain't making that much. The lowest is $27,000, right? So we're looking at a tier 1 city, but yet the rent is that high. How is that possible, Ms. Sharon?
Wow.
So
wow.
With the gun violence Prevention Center. Then we also said an LGBTQ Safe Center, because we do have diversity here in Fayetteville. We have those that don't want to identify, and we have those that self-identify. They should have a safe place to go where they feel safe as well as anybody else, right? So we said an LGBTQ center where they can go and have meetings where they can feel like they're safe, because we have a lot of LGBTQ here, just like I'm sure you have it there. We said start off with $5 million. Now with these centers, we said we want subject matter experts and certified people for substance abuse, mental health, okay, gun violence prevention, conflict resolution certified, okay, juvenile and youth certified. So we're saying we want subject matter experts to run these centers. We don't want regular people. We want regular people for volunteer, but we want people to feel safe. So we still need them certified people. Now, when we're talking about rent and utilities, we're talking about reoccurring money. So we're not talking about that one-time payment like y'all saw before with the rental assistance that happened last year. We're talking about we should have reoccurring funding going through for rental and utility. Nothing should stop. So we should be able to go and get that voucher for DSS anytime. We should be able to go to that community and get a voucher for any time. We shouldn't have to wait until the winter comes and say, okay, now I can go get my utilities down, right? So it should be year round.
Right.
Now the cash assistance. The reason why I put the cash assistance in here, right? Sometimes you can reach, even though you know you ain't gonna catch it, right? But you can still reach. So I put in there because when you look across the board, Canada gave checks to all their citizens every month for 7 months. Then we had California, when they got their rescue plan money, they actually gave checks to all their citizens there as well. So why can't we give checks to those that fall below the poverty level of 27,000, those families that need it, right? Because this money is this is just $40 million that we put on this fact sheet for the city of Fayetteville. The county got $65 million. So this is two separate money, right? So we're not even talking about the county. This is just the city that I did a fact sheet of saying, let's take this from the city, right? And of course, they're going to our partners. But we got a lot of this write-up, and we gave information at the end, you know, what at-risk homelessness looks like. We made sure they had the information to share. They'll know exactly why we put this together this way. Now, let me rewind. I put this together with the U.S. Treasurer and a budget tax center, and they was looking at me like I was out of my mind when I talked about the reoccurring rent, because the thing about that is, right, every county gets money every year from the state. Then every city gets money from the county as well as the state as well as federal. So you can talk about 4 pots of money that we're looking at. Right now, our city of Fayetteville, they voted in to have the $97 million bond. So why are we taking money from American Rescue Plan and we have a $97 million bonds coming in for infrastructure? Tell me why we're doing that, right? So we got to make it make sense, right? We got $97 million over here. They're talking about using 60 million of it for the infrastructure, but you want to take 10 million to use for the infrastructure from this money when we shouldn't. Now, there is a law in this money. Now, I just want to make sure everybody know this money can be used for anything. There's no discrepancy of this money like it is for your state and your county. Like you got to have it, you got to use it for that. Okay. So this money is not used. Let's make sure we're clear on the actual laws. And I'll send you a PowerPoint afterwards. Let's be clear. So you have to allocate your money or have a plan by December 31st, 2024 to allocate funds. And guess what? It has to be gone, allocated, sent. So that means even though I put in there as a city council member, this is a possible project, this is a project, I still have to send those funds immediately, right? Now, if you don't send the funds, it is forfeited and given back to federal pot December 31st, 2026. So this is how long we got to spend this money.
Gotcha.
December 31st, 2026, that money's going to go back and forfeited
go
to
back
that
to the government. Kathy, I hate to jump back in, but I just had to ask the question. We talked about it briefly off camera before the show started, but I just have to understand, because a lot of what you're doing is in the homeless space. And I know that I mentioned to you before that there is a homeless city, what they call a tent city, that is literally near the Bull Stadium and literally near our downtown and literally near where a lot of people go to enjoy the restaurants and the fine dining and the entertainment of, or what some people call an entertainment district here in Durham. How can we have homelessness in America. It's supposed to be this great, prosperous, and wonderful nation. And how can we have it, whether it's in Fayetteville, which is I know where the Army base is, and here in Durham and Raleigh and a number of other places, because that just flabbergasted me in a lot of ways. And I talked to friends of mine that literally live outside of Beverly Hills and some of our rich areas that we were talking about. They've got homelessness there as well. So I was just wondering, how can we have this in this land of milk and honey, as they like to call it?
So my board member Monique Edwards is awesome with this, but I just want to make sure, as you see, you did pop up the definition of homelessness, and I'm happy you did. As everyone can read the screen, it says at risk of homelessness is identified in 24 CF 9.5. Those that risk at homelessness is severely cost burden is paying over 30% of their monthly income towards housing expenses by itself. So in Fayetteville, for a household making less than $50,000 per year, 69% of it is being used towards housing. So that's how you get homeless, right? But also, let's make sure we understand the definition of homeless too. Homelessness definition, as it looks when you go to DSS and anywhere else, is not having a roof over your head. So that means if you're sleeping in a car, you're not considered homeless. I just want to make sure y'all know that. If I'm sleeping in a car, I'm not considered homeless. Guess what else, Mark? If you're sleeping in a tent, you're not homeless. You have a roof over your head.
Wow.
Right? If you're sleeping, I just want to make sure we're clear, right? Because it's a roof over my head. So we got to make sure where homeless is. But at the same time, the definition of saying that you will become homeless because you're spending all this 69% income on just a 2-bedroom.
Wait a minute. I got to back up. I got to back up and then I'm going to bounce off again. I got to back up and then I'm going to bounce off again.
Hold on, Mark. This is what I said to our city council. Because at the end of the day, no one should pass judgments against anyone because Jesus was homeless. Let's first make sure we're clear of that. His disciples and Jesus was homeless. But let's be clear about something else. Anyone can be homeless anytime. So who are we to pass judgment? Who are we to say that homeless people should not be housed?
No, not only that, but I just got to back up because I've had a couple of friends of mine that have literally, lived, including some coworkers of mine, in either their cars or their vans or a number of other things. So you're telling me that technically they were not homeless, even though by their definition, they would think that they were definitely homeless. And in some cases, were even trying to get some of the aid that is offered. But because they were moving around in a vehicle that's not really a home, because a home that usually has it does have a door, but it's not a true home. But by that definition, they were not homeless. And I do know that there are some people that, quote unquote, live off the grid, and that is a matter of choice if that's what they choose to do and everything. But I would say that some of those people that are living in their cars, living in their tents, living in a number of other places, I would still consider them homeless if they don't have an actual home and or apartment. But I hear your definition, and I'm gonna bounce off on that note. But
no, it's not my definition. Look at it. 24. It ain't mine. It's the actual definition of homelessness, period. That's what I'm saying. So it's not Kathy Gregg. To me, I'm like, this is what it says, right? But we know the reality of it is anyone can become homeless if you're making less than $50,000 a year. So my point that I'm making, and like you just said, Mark, at the end of the day, people don't understand what identifies as homelessness. So when they go and try to go get Social Security to help them, I'm sorry, not Social Security. When they go to DSS to try to get something, or they go to the church, they're like, okay, but you are in your car. So you're okay right now. You're not unsafe. You're in your vehicle, right? And your family is okay. So it's okay to live like that, right? That's how they see it. Or the fact that we here don't have transitional housing for domestic violence victims like we should, right? And we don't have it for males that may be experience domestic violence with children. We don't have that either. Or LGBTQ, that's, the sexually assaulted, domestic violence, human trafficking. We don't have those transitional housing here, Mark, for that. We don't even have a rehabilitation center. We have a 24 unit bed that you can only stay 72 hours to rehabilitate yourself. And then you get on the waiting list in Raleigh, where you are, to go up there. Unless it's
that's just crazy. And like I said,
what I'm trying to say is this doesn't make sense, because right now what you're saying is you're upset because you got homeless people that's being, homeless people on your tent or in a tent city or in your park. But guess what? You haven't provided the resources for them to live anywhere else.
No, that's very true. And the city's definitely, yeah, the city's definitely got to do that, and the people have to do that as well. Like I said, I'm gonna definitely bounce off and let you and Sharon finish. But one of the things that I'm involved with is a veterans organization. We actually do the Road to the Apollo. Captain Newborn is part of that. Ironically, he never served a day in the army, but his parents gave him that name. But we do a lot of veteran advocacy work. So I also know that the veterans, and you are a veteran yourself, are some of the people that are impacted by what we are talking about. Because, like I said, Captain uses that as a tool to advocate while it's done in the guise of the Apollo talent show and everything. It is also a tool to advocate for the rights of the veterans, because we do know that there are some serious things that we're going wrong in the medical lanes and other lanes that you veterans have faced. So I just wanted to bring that up as
Yes,
well.
that is true. That is, we had a veteran mother of five, Miss Sharon, that was $30 difference from for she couldn't get benefits because she was $30 short. I mean $30 over making amount of money. So she couldn't get benefits, but she was a single mom with five children. And we had to find her a way to get a place to stay because she was a victim of domestic violence. So that's what I mean. Like, even though I'm $30 over, I still can't receive services at all, even though I'm a victim. Right. So,
Mhm.
this is the thing that we have to make sure that's tedious, right? What's tedious is
Mhm. Mhm.
that we are in an economical crisis, and everyone
Right.
has experienced this crisis. Everyone, and guess what else? Everyone is not exempt from experiences this crisis. I want to make sure we're clear, because people think because they live
Yes.
in a $300,000 house and they make $85,000 a year, they believe in their mind that they will never be experiencing this, but that's not true.
That's
Okay,
not true.
because anything can happen. You can lose your job, something can happen with your health. So, but
Mhm.
right now, I want to let you know why I came up with the American Rescue Plan documentary. So the reason I
Mhm.
had a dream, I'm gonna say again, a dream. So I had a dream, and I had to rest on this dream because I have dreams sometimes, and sometimes I know it doesn't make sense to me when I get up in the morning. Like, nah, I ain't gonna tell nobody that. But this one, I rested on for 2 days. I said, okay, let me make a phone call. I called my board member, Monique Edwards, and of course, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. So she's like, girl, it's 6 o'clock Saturday. What you want? I told her, well, for real, I'm gonna tell you, she hung up on me. I got hung up on, y'all. I don't know. My board member, but anyway, she was like, I said, I think we should do a American Rescue Plan documentary because we need to show the people, other than tell the people and have people come up there and stay with their experience. Let's show them what it looks like, what the economical crisis really looks like, and so they could see it. So guess what happened? She said, "Girl, you are crazy." Click. I got hung up on. But guess what? She called me back at 2 o'clock. Girl, that's a good idea. She's like, this is a good idea. What do you think? So I had already visualized how I want this to look. So one part of it was going to be, the homeless community, because we as Fayetteville Pack, we slept out with the homeless that was in the camps here in the park. We
Mhm.
slept here in
Mhm.
Fayetteville for 2 nights. We went to Raleigh, slept for 2 nights. Went to Durham, slept for a night. That was our statewide effort with Orchid Bloom and all the other organizations,
Mhm.
because we can't talk unless I went with the homeless people, right? We can't say
Right.
nothing about LGBTQ unless you found those people to understand what they need, right? So I always believe in meeting
Right.
where they are, and we did. We went and slept with them. But anyway, so that's one portion with Seth Wish Foundation. They have been phenomenal here helping homeless people. They don't look for ID cards. They don't care about, if you got ID, don't have ID, like the shelters. Just so you know, your shelters in your county, you got to have ID in order to go in
Mhm.
there. Okay. Then we got,
Right.
they're not looking at how much money you make. They're just like, hey, you're homeless, come on in. So that's one organization that is a part of this documentary. We also have the MDC Rule Forward North Carolina. They are a part of this documentary because they are the ones in charge of this project. We have over 10 counties: Beaufort, Henderson, Halifax. All of them are a part of the ARP project. So it's not just Fayetteville Pack. This is a statewide initiative. We have North Carolina Black Alliance, Local Progressive North Carolina. We have all of them a part of this actual effort and initiative to show the people this is your money and you should be using it to get out of your struggle. No one should be struggling with $40 million in our city. No one should be struggling with $65 million in our county. And also, let's be clear, our county still has $30 million in an unreserved bank account from 2 years ago. So we still talking about other different pots of money that's not being used, you know, and it's just sitting there allocating interest or money. We as people are democracy, and democracy is the people, and we need to make sure we advocate for the funds that we put in this city or county. We have former Senator Kurt Deviere. He's also phenomenal. He has helped us with people trying to get apartments and rent. And he used to be a senator here, but he's also on there talking about the environmental portion of Grays Creek that still is waiting for justice on the Gen X. We have someone named Jackie Elliott talking about the Piedmont Gas. They build a Piedmont Gas in a predominantly Black elderly community right behind the subdivision. She talks about that. We have Isaac Smith. He talks about the environmental portion of Fayetteville, how it looks. Monique Edwards is talking about housing, the redistricting, the gerrymandering that we're dealing with right now in Fayetteville live today, when we shouldn't be still talking about this. Redistricting should not be a part of North Carolina maps at all, but we're still talking about that, right? Then we also have Rico Hurst discussing the reentry program. We have Mr. Smith discussing that. We have a pastor by Stuart Clark. They're talking about how we need our churches to get involved and get these people that is not supposed to be poor, not poor. Because first of all, if you're in a church and you're the pastor and you're rich and your congregation is poor, that is a problem. You need to relook at yourself in the pulpit, right? And then we also have Joseph Willer. He is actually a homeless man. He's been living in the shelter for 7 months. Tell me why he's living in the shelter for 7 months and have not received housing. That's what I'm saying. We wanted it to be real. So guess what I said, Miss Sharon? I told Monique it has to be non-script. And she's like, what? I said, we can't have scripts. This has to be real, raw, real people, real life situation. So everybody,
but you know what? I love it. Because you know what, Kathy? This is what I say about the American Rescue money. Why is it that they want to give themselves raises, hire people on salary, do all of that? And you're like, wait a minute. Why do you get first and the working poor get last? But they found a way to go ahead and hire people. I'm like, okay, so when the money go up, what you gonna do to them people? Let them go? Now they back poor. Oh, you need a raise. Oh, you need a raise because, you're getting ready to do something else. What was that you was gonna be doing? Oh, that little next task, and you're getting a $20,000 raise. Now, they had no problem with putting their hand in the pot and pulling out all that money, and then left the other one over there. Everybody got a raise, but the people the money was for did not get anything.
Well, Miss Sharon, you're correct.
Got to expose that foolishness.
Our city received almost 4 raises, right? The people that work for the city, right? Now, then you look across, then you got the sheriffs that receive bonuses, right? Then you look across, the city police receive bonuses. But guess what else? This is the real trickler, right? We talk about teachers, me being one. Teachers, right? Teachers that is at our county schools. They didn't get raises, but the superintendent got now he makes $220,000 a year. Our city manager makes $200,000 a year. So, these raises went up with people that's working in the city or the county, the superintendent, but the superintendent never gave raises to the teachers, but they gave it to the staff. So just, and this is why the teachers just came off of they did a protest last week, a boycott here in Cumberland County. They refused to drive buses because they didn't get a raise. I mean, you're making $13 an hour and you've been driving buses for 19 years. One of the ladies said. So, I mean, why haven't we invested in the people like they invest in the city and the county? Because every day when I go buy gas, every day I go buy a beef jerky, I go buy a candy bar, I'm investing my money. So when are you going to invest in us? And I'm going to tell you what it's called: monopoly of the people, where the city officials are monopolizing and playing monopoly with our lives, and we're allowing it. That's what it is.
But you know
we
what?
are allowing them to do that.
But and we are not educated and organized enough to make a difference and holding them accountable. Because when you go to some of these places where low income people and you try to talk to them about, they have no clue. It's like, they doing what? Then they don't have transportation to go down there to City Hall. Then when you're trying to figure out how to get them down there and educate, because really, some people need to be removed from office.
There we go.
Because they're pimping the poor people. They're pimping the poor people. And so we really, when you and go back to what you were talking about, homelessness, we have to change that definition of that, because just because you have a roof over your head, but if you ain't got nowhere to use the bathroom, you homeless. You can't take a bath or relieve yourself, you homeless. If you don't have any heat, you homeless. Okay, so we have to change that definition. All of these organizations that's working on homelessness, they should be coming together saying, wait a minute, the definition is wrong. That's what we need to be getting behind. Because when the definitions change, things happen. But if you allow them to continue saying you got a tent over your head, but you ain't got a place to relieve yourself. You can't wash yourself. You can't cook. You laying on the ground. Did anybody tell you that a tent, you on the ground? You are between a piece of cloth and dirt. But when it rains, guess what happened? When it's cold, guess what happened? So until we change that definition, and we can change that definition. And I look at the homeless people that's working in that area. That's something I don't know if they really thought about, but that's something to bring together correlation. Say, hey, look, why y'all here talking when you should be saying we want this definition changed? Because this don't make any sense.
Well, if you really
because now we can go build some houses for them.
If you really want to get down and dirty, first of all, that is the definition we need to change, but we also need to change the Housing Act. That's because I don't like to use the word affordable housing, because what's affordable to you, Miss Sharon, may not be affordable to me. I have met and I have been in people's homes where they didn't have electricity and they considered that affordable to them. They considered running water is okay because we don't really need electricity. We're like candles, versus no water is okay. I can go take a shower at the gym, but I can have electricity. So, your affordable is not my affordable. So that's why I don't like to use that term. It's very discriminatory to me.
When I heard up in Washington, D.C., these elected congressmen and senators about, some of us can't afford to find a place. Excuse me. And it's too high to live here. Excuse me. We have to sleep in our office and then take a go back. I'm like, welcome to America. Now, I don't, but you're still.
Wait a minute! Don't forget they got to raise too. You forgot them.
They're not gonna mess with you again, because one thing I was going to say is they also are the same ones that stay in the job forever. Because there's some folks that have been in office for about 50, 60 years, and I definitely think that they need some fresh ideas, some fresh voices, and some fresh other things, and hearing some new voices. Because even our president, and I definitely have some admiration for some of the things that he's done, but he's been in politics for a number of years, and we won't even talk about the possible rematch candidate who has been in politics and real estate for way too long as well. And I think Maxine just recently retired, but there's some folks that have been in there for 60 or 70 years. And I'm going like, at some point, those lobbyists are having too much control over you, and there is too much that you're not listening to your people if you've been in that long. I mean, I can even think, and I admired him to some degree, but he had some things with him as well. But David Price was in office for a long time and all in that space.
Well, I think at the end of the day, we should have term limits. Mr. Lee, I agree with that. I hardly agree. But the thing about it is, right? So, in the Army, we learn something. You lead, you follow, or you move out the way. Those are the only three options in the Army. You are either going to be the leader, or you're going to be the follower, or you move out the way, meaning as you're going to move out the way because you're going to get killed, because leaders can get people killed, right? Yeah. And if you don't follow, you're not going to understand the instructions to lead, right? Because you're not going to be able to lead without following. But the point that I'm saying, and I'm with you on this, is that it's not even about the term limit. It's about the fact of you're a public servant. You have served your time. We are not back in the 1980s, and we need to get into the Generation Z and know it. First of all, we need to get into technology. Right. We need to make sure we understand that, you know, it's going to be a digital age. We're going to be using digital stuff. And if we don't have the people that's in there that's catching up to where we are right now in this age, then guess what? We're going to be still sitting here talking about there's an act itself I don't like to talk about, the Violence Against Women Act. That's 1988. So that's what I'm saying. We're talking about stuff that we should have already dismantled years ago. Okay, housing.
How about just to vote? How about voting? Why are we keeping asking? Why Black people got to ask to vote? I'm just like, really? Why we got to ratify that? We're going a done deal. You know, what I'm like, excuse me?
You can't. We shouldn't have to ask for anything at this time. We should be dismantling the systems that still enslave us, and those are the right to vote, Housing Act. Civil Rights Act. We need to go back and ratify so many systems that's above us, not even local level, not even state level, but the systems that still hold people in slavery.
Yeah, but some people
do that because at the end of the day, we could advocate all day long. But if we still have redistricting, if we have still gerrymandering, if we still have not decriminalizing marijuana, but criminalizing marijuana going on, then guess what? Those people that's still in jail 30 years now, you know, for now, just for one 5-ounce of marijuana, they're going to be in there 30 more years because we have not decriminalized it. We are not caught up to date. North Carolina is still Jim Crow state. North Carolina has not passed any laws that will keep people out of the prison system, the criminal justice system. We are not really saying second chances. We're just taking and flowing with the flow, and we haven't did anything. We are still in that pond water, and pond water don't move at all. Let's be clear. Pond water don't move. Okay. And we're talking about the people that and the thing is, the people that look like us, that is not us, is in these offices making decisions as well against us. So, you know, we need to make sure we clarify that. We got to hold everybody accountable. And I do. I don't care if you look like me. I'm going to tell you if you're wrong because you're a public servant.
Wait a minute, but hold on a second, Catherine. I know we get ready to wind down, but as I recall, and I mentioned Black Wall Street, the one in Durham, there were some of the people that looked like us that sold us down the river, which is why that highway went right through there because they got their check, but the other people didn't necessarily get their checks and everything. So they definitely sell a way that they can make some money, but did they actually look out for the greater good of the community? I would argue that they did not, because they were worried about putting some money in their pockets and all in that space. And we still got some folks that are doing that.
And it still go back to what we said earlier, Mark. Generational wealth is stopped because they did that.
Yep, exactly.
Well, Kathy, we're going to have you back probably on a Saturday where we can have more people to show up on during the daytime, because these are the conversations that we are not having. And the great thing about this platform, we can have those conversations because people need to hear them. We cannot continue having these sidebar conversations, these isolate conversations. It has to be put out there in the atmosphere on every platform so people can say, wait a minute, you mean to tell me they doing what? And they doing what? Because you think about the movement of COVID, having so many people home, they're like, come back. He got his foot on his neck, what? So white people couldn't understand why these young white people was wanting to march. Because that was like, wait a minute.
Yep.
We don't do that.
We had more white people march with us than we had black people, actually.
Right. Because black people had fear that if he put his foot on his neck, they would shoot us if we go out there and march. It was that internalized fear of all the people that's around him and all the police officers around him and the EMS. He wouldn't listen to them because he had a pistol on his shoulder, hip, and we thought we were going to get killed. And that same fear went to marching. That same fear. And so it is, I say the world has woken up in many different ways. And if we don't keep it woke, it'll go back sleep on us again.
Well,
And the people we trying to help.
Miss Sharon, I want to make sure I also give a shout out because we did we wound up getting someone to do our film. They were young, a 27-year-old. The production person name is Grant Hart Productions. He did the film,
Okay.
and he's a white guy. He's only 27 years old. And then we also got his name is Dalen Dodson. It's called Dodson Development. And we got him. So he did an awesome job. So when you're talking about the new generation, I mean, we use them to, hey, let's do this film. We had confidence in them. They were like, I don't know this. I never did a film. I'm used to doing cuts of little videos and stuff. But I'm like, no, we got confidence in you. We think that you can complete this whole film. And of course, we'll have another project come up with them because they did great work with the film. They was able to film everybody and edit and make sure that everything that's in the movie, and it doesn't look a B-rated movie, it looks like a real movie. But the thing is that you're saying, yes.
So the preview is when? When is the preview?
Well, no, we're going to have our documentary on a 4th. It's going to be, you can meet the cast on a 4th, and it's going to be here at the Campbell Theater. It's here on Hay Street in Fayetteville, North Carolina. That's going to be at 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. because we're going to have the cast, meet the cast that day. But then on March 5th, it's going to be at 4 p.m. because, people get out of church and they can have time to come down there, but they're not going to meet the cast. It's just going to be the regular filming. But we will then decide which platform we want it on between Amazon and Netflix, but it will not be sold in stores. This will be sold through Amazon. And then make sure we're clear that we will be giving the proceeds over to those communities that help people. So this ain't for us to gain any money from. We will be giving it to Seth Wiss Foundation. We'll be giving it to that homeless person to make sure they're okay when they move out of the shelter. I mean, we're going to help the people with this money. This isn't for us. We do everything in public servancy and voluntarily. So I just want to make sure we give a shout out because like you were saying, moving forward, we need that youth. We need the Gen Z to step up to the plate. And we use them for this film. And we're hoping that as they move forward in their doing more projects on this to show social justice, to show the real cause of, how people are being affected by our officials and their decisions versus, not for the people. I mean, we have to make sure people can see what's really going on versus closed doors, because them dark meetings are them dark meetings with your life.
But you know what? They are like always doing.
Vote like your life depends on it, because it does. It really does.
Yeah, it does. But they have a documentary place where they have all the documentaries down in Fayetteville. Down in Wilmington. And I think you should enter some of those, because what you will know, these are real, authentic people. It's non-scripted. And what you see is what it is. And that's what people need to see, not the fake Hollywood stuff. But these are people's lives, and these people are talking about their condition, and they're talking about $1. I can't get food stamps because I make $1 more. Yep. I can't get this because I make $3 more, $30 more. We got to expose the broken system that's against us. That's really is not broken. It is fixed that way.
Yeah,
it's not broken.
It's the have and have not. The have and have nots.
Well, we thank you so very much, Kathy, and we cannot wait. I'm going to talk to Mark, our producer, about having you on a Saturday midday to have you come and have a long discussion with us about this. Bring other people to this platform to have that discussion, because the more we talk about it and educate people and have some of the people, the everyday people on the platform telling their story. I want to thank you for the Plan to Prosper show. It has been an honor and a pleasure to bring you such wealth of information. And this is not just happening in Fayetteville. This is happening around the world. But Fayetteville PAC is the model that you can get in touch with to make a difference. Have a fantastic day, and we will be bringing Kathy back. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Miss Sharon, once again. Keep it moving.
Bye-bye.
Give that awareness to everyone. We need it.
That's it.